Biblical perspectives. All Christian churches claim the Bible as authoritative for matters of faith and morals, and yet the scriptures are essentially silent on the topic of abortion. In Exodus chapter 21 through 25, there's an interesting passage in which there's a penalty for harming a woman who is pregnant, and if the fetus dies, there's one punishment. If the woman dies, there's a much more severe punishment. And the implication is that fetal death is not murder per se. In the book of Numbers, chapter 5, actually a man can force a woman to have an abortion if he thinks she has conceived through adultery. But this is also not considered murder. Genesis 2:7, the creation story, the second creation story, associates life with the moment God breathed into a human being the breath of life. That breath, that nephesh in Hebrew, is how the biblical writers thought of the beginning of life. Though the Bible speaks occasionally metaphorically of God knowing us from our mother's womb, the Bible never refers to a fetus as a person. Only those who have been born, who have emerged to live and breathe on their own. Our age is calculated in the Bible and in all human cultures from our birth, not from our conception. Jesus, in the New Testament, often took the side of women and men who were outcasts, who were viewed as sinners in the eyes of the religious. I always think that Jesus was most irritated by religious people, which is something lost on the religious right. I think he liked the people who other people called sinners. I think he had more fun with them. I think he enjoyed eating and drinking with them and thought that religious people were a pain, frankly. And it seems like religious people who say they're following Jesus don't seem to get the irony of that. He was very clear with the men who are about to stone a woman to death, taken in adultery, that he held them accountable, that he had compassion on her. Jesus said that he came that we may have life and have it abundantly. For many women, making abortion illegal will shorten their lives or burden them unbearably. The Jesus I know would not want to add to the suffering or victimization of women. Third, I want to talk a little bit about some contradictions in Christian moral theology about abortion. Catholic theologian, feminist, Rosemary Radford Ruether says, "What right does anyone have to impose an unwanted pregnancy on a woman? This is a moral question that few religious conservatives seem to be asking. There are many organizations for Catholics who believe in a woman's right to choose. Catholic teaching on the primacy of individual conscience seems to be absent when it comes to women's exercise of their own consciences. It seems as though religious systems that do not recognize the full equality of women are the same systems that seek to override a woman's right to choose." Dr. Virginia Mollenkott writes, "To coerce a woman to bear a child she cannot adequately care for is a violent function of sexism. In recent years in my country and in other places, it has become fashionable to talk about the personhood of the fetus, or even a fertilized egg that may or may not be attached to the uterine wall. Dr. Mollenkott talks about the logical extension of these discussions. Dr. Robert Johnson, she says, who regularly performs abortions for young women who feel they need them, and he explained that 600 million sperm are aborted in every act of masturbation or wet dream. Although an embryo is clearly a potential human life, so are those 600 million sperm. Yet surely none of us would argue that the life of every one of them must be sustained. Further, a healthy woman has the potential of bearing 30 children in her lifetime within her reproductive life. Can you imagine what the world population would be like if every woman were required to bear 30 children? What of the millions of miscarriages that occur, each of them a spontaneous abortion of a potential life? The magnitude of naturally occurring fetal wastage in human is considerable, approaching the loss of up to 3/4 of fertilized eggs." And it is really true. In the state of Mississippi, in my country, they tried to pass a law that would have been very unclear and made it sound like even fertilized eggs that had not attached to the uterine wall of a woman were to be considered a person. Thinking about the personhood of a person who's not been born and all of the legal and moral implications are became so overwhelming that even in the state of Mississippi, probably the most conservative state in the United States, rejected that argument last year. The logic of considering every embryo a legal human person breaks down as we deal with the complexity and magnitude of the issue. With the human population growing astronomically in the last century, is our ideal really to have women bear more and more children? Dr. Paul Simon says, morally speaking, to claim that a conceptus is a human being is to introduce what Cicely Bach has called a premature ultimate. People have an absolute value, and people have an absolute value in Western and other systems of morality, but fetuses do not. They have value, but they are not of equal or more value with actual persons, in particular, the pregnant woman. Finally, let's stick with facts. In the United States, for instance, 51% of abortions are performed at the 8th week, 91% by the 12th week, 99% by the 20th. Lung and kidney function are not really viable until the 24th week, and the brain until the 28th week. A fetal neocortex, which registers pain, is not functioning until after the 24th week. Countries where contraception is not available, part of women's health care, and where abortion is illegal, have more abortions than countries where contraception is available and abortion is legal. And if our goal is to reduce the number of abortions, if that is a good goal, and you would want to do that simply for the fact that it is a medical procedure that carries risk with it, then you would want to create the conditions where fewer and fewer abortions have to occur. Education, universal reproductive health care, anti-poverty measures directed at women are the key forces that lower abortion rates. And teaching women how to space the number of children is one of the best predictors of women's health and the health and well-being of her family and nation and the planet.